Hello again from Scouse Farm. You may be asking, what am I doing standing in a field looking at some houses in the distance? Well, this is King George V playing fields in Huyton, and the reason I'm here is because in the 1940s what you can see stretched out in front of you is a prisoner, or was a prisoner of war camp. So I had heard something, or I sort of recall something, because I live in Huyton and I know, or I've heard about the prisoner of war camp, but I didn't realise that it was until I looked into it. A friend of mine, Sue, told me about it at the weekend, or told me a little bit more about it than what I already knew. So I decided to come out and film. But the weather's not the best, as always. I'm going to be saying that a lot more because obviously we're getting into winter. But this area in front of you was opened as a prisoner of war camp in 1943, and there are a number of camps in Huyton from that period of time, but this one where we are now, or this area where we are now, this was specifically a prisoner of war camp. So it was for captured German and their enemy forces of the countries like Italy and so on, Austria, and they were housed here. But it was more of it wasn't like a harsh condition for them in the prisoner of war camp, because there are stories that you can read, and I'll link down below, so have a look in the video description down below. I'm going to link some articles and further information about the prisoner of war camp, because it is fascinating. There's like a story about one fella who he married a lady who lives here in Huyton and lived happily ever after here for like 50-60 years or whatever, because I think he lived till about 93 years of age, German, and he stayed, or German or Austrian, but the details are down below, you can read for yourself. And this camp was also home to, for the football fans amongst you, the Manchester City goalkeeper Bert Trautmann. He was housed here, and he later went on to become famous for, amongst other things, he played the 1956 FA Cup final with a broken neck. So at some point, I don't know the full story, but at some point either during the match or before the match, he broke part of his neck and didn't realise till after the match or something. But yeah, Bert Trautmann was a prisoner of war in this camp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you across the road, so we'll go on a little walk, and we're in the top end of Longview Lane now, and the houses that are in this area, see these houses, these were all on the outskirts of the infamous camp, which wasn't a prisoner of war camp but basically an internment camp, and that's where I'm going to go and take you now. And the friend of mine, she mentioned a certain road, and I'm going to walk you over to the road now, so it won't take too long, but you're not going to see much as I walk up a road. It's just me walking up a road. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the internment camp while we're walking up. And at the top, at where we come out now, that's Hillside Avenue, and Hillside Avenue was another camp. So in total there were, let's say, three camps, three distinguished camps. So you've just seen the area where the prisoner of war camp was, and we're going to be walking up to where the internment camp boundary was. But also when we get to the top, if you can see in the distance, you've got the two red lights there, the traffic lights, if it shows up on camera. But beyond them, to the right, the houses there, that's the corner of Hillside Avenue, and that was an American GI base which was opened in 1944. So this area of Huyton was cordoned off and used to house German soldiers during the latter stages of the Second World War, as they were preparing for and getting ready to go over into France during D-Day, and then obviously after that stayed here towards the end of the war and beyond. But the internment camp is where most of the stories come from, and for those who like the mysteries and the ghosts and goblins, there are a number of people who've genuinely, unbeknownst to each other, seen the same thing. So it's best described as a monk or some sort of religious person in a, you know, like a monk's gown or a cloak, and it is a local ghost story. There's at least 2 people I know who've mentioned it to me, that they've seen a specific ghostly apparition wearing some sort of religious clothing. Just gotta go past this dog. And that's where we're about to come out now. So when I come out onto the top, we're going into the area of the ghost land, and that links in very well with the internment camp. So in 1939, as the outset of the Second World War started, obviously any German citizens, Austrian citizens who were living in the UK were deemed by the state as enemy aliens, because they could be Nazi sympathisers and saboteurs who would assist the Nazi war effort by destroying infrastructure within the British mainland. So internment camps were erected across the country in a number of locations, with the biggest, or one of the biggest, being up here in Huyton, which is east of the city of Liverpool on the way out. And the internment camp conditions were horrendous. So someone wrote a letter to Parliament, to an MP, to state how bad the conditions were. So a lot of the Huyton locals were, you know, they weren't happy with what they were seeing. They were thinking, yeah, okay, we need to make sure there's no enemy combatants or sympathisers there, but you know, you can process them a bit better than that, because the conditions were terrible. And as I say, have a look and read some of the articles down below in the video description, and there are also some pictures there that you'll see the conditions that the people were living in. But in, I think, the mid 1940s, the camps were built and put up, so they started to bring more people in from all over the country to be stationed here in Huyton. And that was because Liverpool, being a port city, once they were processed and they were found to be sympathisers or whatever, deemed enemy combatants, they were to be shipped off to Canada, Australia, New Zealand and elsewhere. So this was a perfect place to put them, because we obviously had a major port here in Liverpool. Try and get over the road here without taking a hit off a bus or something. And this little area now, you can see, can't even get through, might have to walk around actually. But this patch of grass now, this is the edge of Wassell Bridge Road, and from what I can gather, this was the perimeter of the internment camp. Now the actual information on some of the articles states that the perimeter was further down, but I've found pictures of Wassell Bridge Road, which you'll see shortly, that have barbed wire and fence guards on them, so you can see for yourself once I get round here now, and I'll show you the area. Look at that cloud, it's not looking very good, is it? You can see now, I'm going to walk you up to the exact house that you can see a picture of from the old wartime photographs. And to the right, where you see that Tesco now, and further on them shops, that was the start of the American GI camp. And look, there's another surveillance camera, so maybe we haven't got over the war yet. Let me walk you down. It is a bit windy, so sorry if you're getting a bit of fuzz on the microphone. There's not much I can do about that until I get a better microphone to do these videos. But it should subside once I get round the front there, because I'm on a bit of a high point. And yet the letter was written to an MP. Who was the MP? I think some strange posh name, which Sir Waldron Smithers MP, which you don't see many of them names nowadays, do you? But the letter was written to Sir Waldron Smithers, and the letter was to highlight the conditions that the internees were living in. And these houses you're going to see now, these were built but not yet occupied, so they were still under construction in large parts. And these are Liverpool Corporation built council houses, or were at the time. And instead of putting people who were evacuated from areas of Liverpool that suffered during the Blitz in 1941, they allocated it to prisoners of war, internees, which didn't go down well with some of the locals at the time, considering what happened afterwards with regards to the conditions they were kept in. But all of these houses, some of the people who did move in when the internment camp was disassembled, deconstructed, they found all sorts of writings on the walls, and in some of the houses there was like swastikas on the walls and on the floors and things. So there were a few sympathizers or enemy combatants or aliens as they were known at the time, but also there was probably quite a few people who were just placed in there by birth of passports. So if their passport said they were Austrian, they were placed in internment camps, separated from the families, because females and males got placed in different camps, and children. So that was obviously devastating for the families at the time. And there are again plenty of stories about that you can read up on, and I'll place the links down below. See, that dog agrees. But I'm walking down now to the area where I found a picture that shows the house that you're about to see on the corner, and you can see it's definitely this house. So although some of the maps say that the internment camp finished further down in Woolfall Heath, I think this was an overspill part of the camp, because there are pictures of barbed wire, and I think, is that the one there, or is it a bit further up? I'm not sure. Looks different when you're walking up here than it does on the paper. So let's see if it's that one. No, I don't think it's that one. Might be. I'll just spin you around now and we'll see if it's this one or if it's one up on the corner. But the picture down below that you can see, I think could be this house here where the picture is, or because the house next to it has them what I call castlements or battlements or whatever they are, where the front of the brickwork goes above the window. So you can see, I think it might be this house here, so just keep an eye on that. Or if it isn't that one, I'll spin you around. You can see like the field up there as well, that was part of the internment camp. So everything this side was part of the internment camp by the look of the records that I've delved into. And yeah, going back to Sir Waldron Smithers, the MP, Winston Churchill got wind of the conditions, and he either come up and inspected himself or send someone to inspect, and he wasn't best pleased. So he made it better for the internees at the time, and the camp was closed in 1941, October 1941, I think, if I remember rightly, and that was in a large part due to a tragedy that occurred, whereby all of the prisoners who were going to get shipped off to Canada, some of them, as I say, went to Australia, New Zealand, some of them went to Canada, but the ones that were getting shipped over to Canada, they had to get moved out from Liverpool port, and the ship Arundora Star, which was built in Camberlades, which is on Merseyside over, I think, in Birkenhead area, well, that ship was torpedoed by a U-boat off Ireland and sank, losing 800 souls. And that tragedy then forced the British government at the time to go, okay, no more deportations, we're just going to keep them on the UK mainland until they can be processed. So that stopped that happening. And I think I might have been wrong before. I think this is the house. Yeah, this one looks more like it. We'll see now. But yeah, I think it's this one. So scratch what I said before, because we've got the turn in the road as well. So yeah, it's definitely this one. What you're about to see, this is the photograph. So that photograph you can see down below in the video description. It's this house, and you've got the way where the brickwork goes above the bottom of the roof line there. You can see the red end of the gable and the stack. So that is the photograph. So like if you pause the video now, you've got a photograph of this, and then 1940, and then somewhere here where I'm standing is literally where that barbed wire is, or was, which is quite staggering really, that I'm standing in an internment camp where the guard was. And in my past as a soldier, I've actually been in a prisoner of war camp, not as a prisoner but as one of the guards, so to speak, temporarily. And I know that it's not a nice place for people to be when they're placed in there and separated from the families, because I'd done a bit of that in Iraq in another life. But the internment camp gladly was closed down in 1941, and then the houses were then over time returned to use by citizens of Liverpool. And this whole area is just bizarre to me that it was like over there where we've just been, there's a prisoner of war camp. I'm standing in an internment camp, and then over there was an American GI camp. So that is madness. It is absolute madness. But there is something I did write a note down about what people thought of this camp when they lived in this area, because you'd think like people were against the enemy and all that sort of stuff, but the residents around here were appalled by the treatment of the prisoners or the people who were interned here. So they used to smuggle food to them through the railings and all that sort of stuff, and befriend them and try and keep them happy. So that's a great thing. And also inside the internment camp you had an Austrian composer called Hans Gall, and he wrote his what he named or deemed as Huyton suite, which was composed for one violin and one flute and two violins, if I remember. And that was because that was the only instruments he had available to him. So someone must have smuggled in some instruments through the barbed wire for him to play, and he composed the Huyton suite. And also in the internment camp were two artists. One was named Walter Nessler and the other one was named Hugo Daschinger, and they painted scenes from inside this internment camp, and then paintings or drawings were displayed in the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool city centre, and they are still in there, but I'm not sure if they're still on display. But again, have a little look in the video description below and you'll see some links to further information about it. But what I wanted to leave you with was the statement, and the statement was that the government of Britain, the wartime government of Britain, were seen in a very bad light, and it reflected badly on the government, this internment camp, and the conditions the people lived in. But it reflects very well on the people of Huyton, true Scousers who understand and object to injustice and who will always fight it. And that is a bone of pride for me, because that is exactly what a human being should be doing if you see injustice, especially at times of war where sanity goes out of the window and the truth is the first casualty. So if you can remember the humanity, you're always on the right side of it. And without getting too deep into the old background of military operations and my own personal feelings, is that, you know, I disagree strongly in hindsight why I was over in Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that. But I can hold my head up because I acted in the right way. And when I was I'm not going to say in charge, but when I was dealing with prisoners of war and things, then I treated them right every single time. And everyone who was with me, worked with me in my sections, troops, every one of us all treated them in the right way. And some of the news I've read when I come back from Iraq about abusive prisoners and things like that, which later were shown to be what they actually were, which was complete lies by the Daily Mirror newspaper or whatever it was at the time, where they fabricated a story about some prisoners of war being mistreated, when actually it was a fake video filmed in the UK by reservists who didn't even have the right rifles to be deployed to Iraq. Because long story short, the rifle in the video was an SA-80A1, which had a round cocking handle, and nobody deployed to Iraq with an SA-80A1. We all had SA-80A2s, which had a curved cocking handle. So that in itself was game over for that pack of lies. But anyway, I don't want this to become political, so it's not going to be. And hopefully that's the last time I talk about it on any more videos. So thank you very much for watching. The wind's picking up and Liverpool are about to kick off soon, so I'm going to get back home. So thank you very much for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up And thank you very much to all the subscribers for getting me over 600 subscribers, which happened today. I'm delighted. And Scouse Farm, we'll see you all again soon.